.NET 6 using Onion architecture, adding a user interface with Blazor.
You are programming with Palermo. You deliver software. You need to move fast, deliver quality, and run your software with confidence. Stay tuned for timeless solutions, simple methods, and topics that will propel you forward. And now your host, lifelong programmer, author, teacher, coach, Christian, and charismatic speaker, Jeffrey Palermo.
Welcome back to Programming with Palermo. Thank you for being with me. Today, we are going to kind of cap off our basic Onion architecture implementation on .NET 6 by adding to our application a Blazor user interface in the simplest way, just so everyone can see how we've created the core of our Onion architecture structure, and then we've added on interfaces. First, with an interface to a database. Second, with an interface to a person. Okay, and of course you add on all kinds of interfaces in the same manner, but the user interface we typically add last because we need to get the rest of the structure up and running, and we're going to wire it in. And the interesting part is that in .NET UI projects, typically the UI project also has responsibility for starting up the application, which is a very explicit responsibility. And so we need to be aware that there's two responsibilities here when we add that project in Visual Studio. The first responsibility is to start up the application, regardless of what it does. The second responsibility is to have an interface to a user where a human being can actually bring up a screen, look at some things, interact, type in some text boxes, hit some buttons, those kinds of things. And if it was a command line application, then it would be the same thing. Responsibility for starting up the application and then letting the user interact with it. Same thing with a web service API application, or even a back-end job that just listens for messages coming on a queue. We have the startup responsibility. That's just the way that Visual Studio tooling has always used, and the way the .NET framework works. And so in Onion architecture, we treat those differently, and you're going to see how we do it and how we make sure that we don't muddle user interface responsibilities with our startup responsibilities. So let's get into it. Okay, let's start reviewing what we have in GitHub. And we have issue number 5 that I've added, just so you know we're working on. And then, of course, the code. You can find, we're going to actually go back to the master branch. And I invite you to clone this code, pull it down, see what we've done. Just as a quick aside, between the last episode and this one, we didn't film it, but what we did is we went in and we cleaned up any .NET 6 warnings. I like everything to be clean. And just went around and cleaned those things up, and then refactor a little bit in the integration test. You can see that explicitly. If you look in the branches, I'm branching for every step so that you can go back and you can see the individual steps without having to muck around with commits. So if you view all branches here, you can see test host dependency resolution, and I'll show you the individual commits if you click into there. So if you're interested in just seeing step-by-step, commit by commit, what I've done in this repository, it's all there. It's all there. Okay. All right. So now let's go back. Let's jump into Visual Studio and let's look at what we have here. So we have our integration tests, and of course we can run those however we'd like to. Just going to run this one just so you can see that it is there. Again, we have SQL local DB we're creating. The data interface does work. Just make sure that our test is still good. Pending, it's going to pass without any drama. I always like to make sure to do one of these just before we get going, and you can run the whole private build. Okay, there we go. Took a little bit to spin up. So now, why don't we go ahead and let's just create our Blazor application. So let's see, add new project. And we're going to dive right in. We're going to do a Blazor WebAssembly app. Now, this is going to create 2 projects. A Blazor server-side app would only create 1 project and is definitely fewer concepts. But I think that most of the applications these days, if they're on the web, they kind of need to be more of a spa that takes advantage of the user's client CPU and client memory. And so when we use a WebAssembly application, we can do that. If you know that you're not going to have to be scaling out a whole bunch and tons of consistent traffic that would use up a whole bunch of your server-side CPU and memory, and you just want to jam out something, then Blazor server-side, fewer concepts, you go. Everything's running on your server. But let's just do this because I want it to be more realistic. Let's see. Okay, we have that. Now, Visual Studio always drops things in folders I don't want it to, but let's see if it does. So we're going to call this, let's see, data access. Let's just call this, let's keep it simple, UI, user interface. Okay, hit next, and configure for, and it's going to be ASP.NET Core hosted, progressive, don't use top level statements. Okay, top level statements. If you haven't looked at whether you want to use those or not, then I'm just gonna let it go ahead and use the top level statements, and we're just gonna deal with it because it does change the startup characteristics. But let's jump in. Okay, so what we have is UI.shared, UI.server, UI.client. I don't really care about these. I actually don't care about this either. Control-Shift-B. Let's go ahead and do a compilation. And what we're going to do is we're just going to, our existing query with church bulletin item, we're just going to query him back for a particular date, and we're just going to throw it on the screen and make sure it all wires up. We're not going to add any features. So that worked out just fine. And we got the basic template there. So let's go ahead and set this as the startup project. And let's go ahead and Control F5. Let's run it, see what happens. Okay, it's loading up. Hello world. Okay, default template, fetch data. There we go. And if I hit F12, oh, that's a big screen. If I hit F12 over here and go to network, and I can go to counter, that's going to be it. But if I fetch data, I saw that I in fact did go over to the server and it pulled back this data, so that's good. All right, so that's working. It's all wired up like it should. Now we need to make it so that our web service is connected to the rest of the application. So I'm going to go ahead and go to our controllers of our server, and I'm not gonna test drive this just yet. We're going to make an episode where I'm going to show you how to test drive Blazor components. And we're actually going to refactor Blazor to model view controller and separate controllers from views. But let's just model. We have a controller. Okay, not controller. There we go. So I am going to call this church bulletin item controller. There we go. And I don't care about any of this stuff. I don't care about the logger for now. I mean, you can do that, but okay. So actually, default constructor is just fine with me. We are going to get IEnumerable of church bulletin item. And of course, we don't have that because we need a reference. Okay, so UI server, add reference. Reference, where is it hiding? And it's going to reference core. That's all it needs to reference. It does not need to reference data access. Okay, oh, hot reload. We're going to continue editing. I don't really need hot reload right now. Current church bulletin item, great. And then that's all we're going to do. Now, I actually need to do some logic. So I need to have a constructor, let's see, with a, it's going to be the iChurch bulletin item by date handler, because I need a way to actually send the query. So I have the handler, and there we go. I can save that off into a private method. And then what I can do, I know this is going to be super simple because I've already tested it this way. I'm going to handle and new query with a date time. So, the date time, and I'm going to use just to make it easy. I know that I have a test, church bulletin mapping tester, church bulletin by date. It's creating 4 in my database, and I'm going to look for the ones in the year 2000. Okay. All right. So new date time 2000. There we go. And I'm going to pull that off into that. All right. Don't want. Okay. So now I have items, and I can return it. There we go. All right. There we go. All right. So that looks like it's going to work. Let's see here. If I go to fetch data and hit F12 and go to the network tab, then it's actually going to weather forecast. But it's going to 7174 weather forecast. All right, so we have that. So as far as the URLs go, it should be church bulletin item. All right, there we go. So we're not even going to put it in our UI just yet because we can't get an iChurch bulletin item by date handler while attempting to activate because we haven't wired it up. Okay, so how do we wire it up? We have to go to our startup. So not the startup in the client yet, but even just for this web service. So let's go to program, and you can see there's no main method, no startup class. It's really this stuff. So builders.services and use routing, all this stuff. So right here, before we actually run builder.build, we have to put some things in before we do our builder.build. Now, in previous commits, let me just show you something. This test host, we created this test host for our integration tests, and it is actually used in our test because if we need a handler, so if I need to test the handler, I just say, hey, with the services collection, the dependency resolution mechanism in .NET, get required service, church bulletin item by handler, and of course if I control B into it, there is a constructor argument. It needs a data context, and so go back to we're using this in our test. Okay, what is a test host? Because now we're creating an actual host that's running. Well, this is kind of the basics of what you have to do just to create a host that can do all the .NET-y stuff. And so you see some of this configure, blah, 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 add. We don't need our app settings just yet. But of course the tests do have an app settings because we need the SQL connection string. I think earlier we just hard coded this, but now we're pulling it out of an app setting that's in our tests, and we can add other things. All right. So these are what we need to add just to be able to, ask for the interface and then get the particular class that implements the interface. We don't need this one obviously because it's about test data. And we actually don't even need this because in our user interface, we don't even know that this exists because we don't even have, so the only thing that we need is this right here, I think. And then of course, after it builds, so this stuff needs to happen before build. So why don't we give it a shot to see if that's the only thing that we need to add here. So builder dot services collection. Let's see. Yeah, add transient. Okay. Add transient. This, but actually, in order to know about this, in order to know about this, we have to have some class that knows all of it. This is the gotcha. This is where the startup logic kind of can trash all of your references for you, because in here we have a client, and if I look at dependencies, packages, you can not packages, projects, you can see that UI client has a reference to UI.shared. UI.server also has a reference to UI.share, but UI.server has a reference to client. Okay, so in this architecture, you know what? Sometimes I like to show some of the, where's that architecture menu? Analyzing tools. I have so much memory of the various tools that have come and gone in Visual Studio. Run code on solution window. There used to be a diagram where you can diagram the whole Visual Studio. I haven't used it in a while, but I'm not going to worry about it now. But if you want to see these, the UI.server has a reference to client, okay? And UI.server also has responsibility for starting up the application. Now, it's actually improved with Blazor WebAssembly because you got two projects. If you're doing Blazor server side, if you're using Web API, ASP.NET and MVC, or any other type of web projects, you have one project that's all of the user interface and project startup. And so if we look here, well, in order to do project startup and in order to register dependencies, we have to make this project reference the other project that has our data handler, which is data access. And so now we're coupling the project that has a user interface with a project that has a data interface. They're totally different concerns, but now we're coupling them from a dependency perspective. This is not good. Now, if you're doing this by yourself, yeah, you might be able to keep certain things in your head. No, I'm not going to do any data access in the user interface, and I'm not going to do any user stuff in the data. But you create this for your team, and your team is just saying, oh, I can get to this data stuff from the UI. I mean, you reference that project, you have access to your Entity Framework data context. And so now your DB context and members on your team are just going to use it because IntelliSense is popping it up. There it is. Don't like that. You want to create a structure where the things that you can get to easily are intentional. Okay. So what we're going to do now is we are actually going to reference data access from UI.server because we have to here. Now, UI.client, that's going to have really all of our user interface. It's only going to be referenced by UI server. So the client, the Blazor application, the Blazor WebAssembly application is not going to have any reference to data access. So you can't accidentally do data stuff in the Blazor components. However, where is our weather forecast controller or our church bulletin item controller? It's in UI.server. This is an interface. Now, it's not a user interface. It's an API, application programming interface, but it is an interface for something else. It's not an interface to the database, okay? So this code lives in a project now that has a reference to a different interface. Not good. We are going to fix that in another episode, but I just wanted to call that out, okay? So as you think, again, you're thinking architecturally about how to structure this and which things are going to bite you in the butt later. All right, so let's go ahead and just add project reference. Where's that add menu, project reference? And we're going to add to data access and edit to make change, stop. Stop the application, go ahead. All right, so now, pop right up, Alt Enter. Okay, let's do a quick format on this, clean up the using statements, and let's do a build. Okay, add transient, add here. Yes. I don't think that this is going to work. I don't think this is going to work either. Server's no longer running. That's fine. Okay. Control F5. Server's not. Of course, it's no longer running. I don't want it running. Okay, so that's an odd error. I've seen that before. All right, let me show the toolbar. Standard. Usually do this and unable to connect. Well, yeah.
Programming with Palermo is brought to you by ClearMeasure, a software architecture company that empowers .NET teams to be self-sufficient, moving fast, delivering quality, and running their software with confidence in Azure. If your team has a project that's too important to be delayed or derailed, ClearMeasure can help, while keeping your team in the driver's seat and growing in capability. Click on clearmeasure.com for more information. If you are an architect or .NET engineer aspiring to become an architect, check out clearmeasure.com/careers. Now, back to the show.
Interesting. That error doesn't really pop up much. Seems like, oh, because it couldn't even start up. Okay, some services are not. That's a trick. If you start with debugger, any exceptions that happen before you can even launch something. Okay, so services are not able to be constructed. Blah blah blah. Few details. Creating. Here's the full error. Okay, so I know what this is. It's because we gave the application some intelligence that this is the type, but we didn't tell this how to do this type. So check this out. In our test host, we have a dependency graph or intelligence about this dependency that is specific to the data interface, that we have to actually give it some intelligence about this guy. If we want this particular dependency, then we have to tell it that there's a DB context factory. And actually these three, well, sometimes you don't know what you're doing for testing and whatnot. But you know what? You see how it's already starting to get messy. It's already starting to get messy because we're having to add dependency graph logic that's specific to our data interface. This is specific to our data interface. And now we're having to add that intelligence in a code file that's a part of a different interface. Okay. Onion architecture is all about building your core and then managing interfaces, and the dependency, the order of dependencies all to the center. So we're just going to get this working, and then we're going to go from there. Now, if it doesn't start up, I know why. Web server is no longer running. Well, let me show you. It's because data context. Yeah, we need the rest of it. Okay, so these three go together, and let's just add stop and paste. Okay. I'm gonna show you a little trick. Copy this, and let's do a hold down Alt key, highlight all of them, Control V for paste. Okay, and let's save and Control F5 again. And let's see if that doesn't clear it up. Oh, what are we doing here? All right, let's debug and see what that error. Some services are not able to be constructed. Call stack, church bulletin, transient implementation type, add scoped, add transient. The original code. Some services are enabled. Error while validating. Unable to resolve service for type I data configuration. Another one. See, we're having to walk all the way back. Okay, so now we need iData configuration, but it's not going to be. Now we need an implementation for iData configuration. We actually don't have an implementation for iData configuration, so we're going to have to create it. Again, data. This is a data interface. I can't even get my UI working. So let's see. Builder.services.add transient data configuration. There we go. And we need a class. And let's make this class data configuration. And of course, it doesn't exist, but we're going to have to go and make it. So we're going to create the type. It's going to create it at the bottom. Data configuration. Let's go ahead and implement missing members like that. And let's move it out to its own file. Shift Alt L, that's where it is in the Solution Explorer. Okay, so now I need to fix data. Now I need to fix the namespace. Move to UI.server namespace. Yep. Okay. Oh, by the way, I didn't fix the namespaces. I'd never like to mess with that. So let's get in here. Let's get in here and let's fix it. Okay. And then let's go down to the next one. Okay, that's the namespace there. And then let's go to UI.server. And these are the namespaces there. And these are the namespaces there. Okay. Save, Control F4. Outside the project. The external changes have been discarded, but I'm saving a backup file. Yeah. I hate those backup files. Okay. And that's the... Okay. So now here, in order to fix the namespaces, I'm going to move that there. Okay. Now it's going to be pretty easy because we actually just look at our test host. Actually, look at our test data configuration. It's going to be the same line. We need I configuration. So I mean, we could really just do this. Return. We can return that. So let me copy that line. And let's see. I think I need a dependency. I need a I configuration. There we go. And let's put it into a constructor. Okay, and I lost my line. Lost my line. I had it in the clipboard, I thought. Paste. There we go. All right. So I also need my app settings. And I believe I already have app settings in UI.server. I just need to add the connection strings. Okay. I'm going to add it to the top. There I go. Control F4. I think that is... All right. Go at the top, data configuration, hit save, format this. Have some namespaces. Okay. So this is going to be import programming. Okay. There we go. This is gone now. So okay, I need to do a solution clean. Clean solution. Get rid of all those other files. Do a rebuild. Ref UI.client not found. UI.server. Well, yeah, it's not there. Anytime you change namespaces. Okay, so we do a rebuild. When you change namespaces, you want to do it at the beginning because, you know, compilers and various things. Okay, so UI.client ref cannot be found from UI.server. So let's look here. UI.client. Can we clean this guy? Clean. And can we rebuild? Okay, how about this guy? Clean. Rebuild. Whenever this, you just gotta. Okay, so we rebuilt that. Now, can we rebuild this? Could not be found. Okay, where is this? All right, I'm gonna fix this. All right, that was a weird error, but just had to restart things and undo. All right, Visual Studio doesn't like you changing namespaces and project settings, and sometimes you have to close it and restart Visual Studio and all that stuff. It's frustrating, but all right. So we have data access stuff in a UI interface, in a user interface project or API, application programming interface project that I don't like. But just to get it to start up, we have to add the data configuration, and that is getting the SQL connection string from this app settings. Okay, there we go, SQL DB. So let's go ahead and start up this project, Control F5, and let's see if we can church bulletin item. All right, hey, look, there we go, straight from our database. Now, if you don't believe that, you know what, let's just go ahead and create, this is the start of a test I always do. I called it a data loader test, and I put a Z in front of it, so it's always at the bottom. But we have a test that kind of creates a whole bunch of objects. And so if I was to I'll insert new test fixture, we're going to call this Z data loader. And unit test frameworks tend to run things in alphabetical order, but if we just have one that we can always rebuild. Okay, go ahead. All right, and we're going to do a test here, and let's just say load data, and I'm going to paste this in. Empty database. Oh, doesn't exist because we have that as a helper method. And actually this is the, I'm not going to refactor this just yet. I always have an empty database method, but this is effectively, it's a database emptier, and it needs that. Okay, so we're going to delete all the data. Then we're going to, actually, I'm going to make this all 2000. So we're going to paste. This is going to be 2, 3, 4. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4. Save them off to the database. Yeah, okay. So now let's see, at least one assertion. Okay, fine. Just make the squiggly go away. Assert.true. There we go. Assert.pass. Okay. Control TR for run tests. Running it with ReSharper, load the data. We're going to get the data in the database. While that is going, it should finish pretty quick. Of course, it's effectively starting up an application. All right, it passed. Inside Server Explorer, we have our data connection of our table, local DB. And if I was to show the data, show table data, we should have 4 records exactly, all in the year 2000. There we go. Sweet. You know what? Just so that I have something here, let's give it a name. Name equals 1. Copy, Shift Alt down, paste, and 2. Oh shoot, what's it doing? Okay, 2, 3, 4. So let's run this test again. The data will be in the database, and then we'll come out to our. Okay, let's see if I can Control F5. It's still running. Only 1. Only give me 1. No, that's not right. Oops. Control F5. Okay, let's see what we did. So in, not that, Visual Studio. Okay, in our show data, we have 1, 2, 3, 4. Did I mean to do that? Huh, I really wanted it to be here. Okay, this is all going to be 1. There we go. Want it all in the same year. So now let's go over to. All right, there we go. Okay, so we have our data. Let's quickly get it over to our client. So in our client, we have our pages, counter, fetch data, and index. We're just going to go ahead and let's make a copy of the fetch data. And let's say fetch church bulletin. Let's just use that same pattern. Weather forecast. Bulletin. Gotta make it pretty. This demonstrates fetching church bulletin items. All right, there we go. And of course, this is going to be bulletin. Same pattern. Okay. This is going to be the date. This is going to be the name. And we don't need anything else. Control X for bulletin date. Don't need Control X. And of course, these are going to be church bulletin item. And we don't have it because we haven't added the reference. So we need a reference to core. Core only. We're only referencing core. There we go. And now we're going to build error. No, we need to stop this. So hot reload on file save. Let's stop that. Okay, church bulletin items. There we go. All right, and so now we're gonna get church bulletin items. Oh, CBI. That's why it wouldn't give me the autocomplete. Wonder why it wasn't doing it that time. Bulletin item. Okay, and no, that's church bulletin item. All right, let's see what we get. Date, name, it's coming out, and save. Let's go ahead to fetch church bulletin. Let's go to the main layout. Oh, the nav menu. And the nav menu has this. I'm just going to add another one. And the href is fetch church bulletin and fetch bulletin. Okay, save, Control F5, restart. Did we have any errors? Web server listening. Oh, okay. So what did? Let's quickly look at the error that it had in console. Computed. Let's see here. There, it's hiding. Okay. All right. Failed to compare object not reference, routing. Failed to compare two elements in the array. The following routes are ambiguous. Oh, okay. We can fix that. So fetch. Yep. I just copy and pasted, but of course I have to change that here. So restart this. I don't know, I should use hot reload, but okay. So now we have fetch data is working, and for bulletin, there we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so it's coming back. Fetch data. Oh, because fetch data is hard coded, whereas this had to kind of wire up. But now that now that you're, there we go, there we go, there we go. Okay, so that's how we're wiring it up. Now, I don't like the dependencies. We are going to fix this because this type of architecture cannot stand. It's going to bite you in the butt. But in program, the fact that we are adding dependency graph information of a data interface in the project file of a user interface, not okay. Not okay. We're going to fix that. All right. Thank you. All right. So that was another part of .NET 6 using Onion architecture, adding a Blazor WebAssembly application to the Visual Studio solution. You saw the things that kind of fell into place because we already had our query, we already had the database going. That was pretty straightforward. And the fact that the WebAssembly project is separate in just the base template from the project where you put your web services so that you can call back to the server, there is separation, and your actual UI project is pretty safe because it doesn't have to, it's not muddled with all those other dependencies. But because the API project, UI.server, also shares the responsibility of application startup and creating the actual application host and building the services collection, we saw that there are details about how the data interface needs to work that were being forced to put into a project for a application programming interface, okay? So logic and intelligence of one interface is bleeding into the code of another interface. We're gonna fix that in upcoming episodes. I just want you to be aware of it. Unless you train yourself to look for that, you have to kind of put it just to get your application working. We also added a Z data loader integration test, so to make just throwing records into a database easy. And a great pattern I tend to do is just keep on adding objects so that I can easily run that test, which will just clear out my local database and then reload it with canned data that you always need when running an application locally. And you can always refresh it, and it makes your developer loop a lot faster. So God bless you. Thank you for programming with Palermo.
You've been watching Programming with Palermo, your primary place for highly productive programming protocols and practices. Remember, you have what it takes. You can do this. You are a programmer, formed by God Himself and called to this profession for a purpose. You can catch every episode at palermo.network as well as syndicated locations nationwide. We're so glad you tuned in. Until next time, may God bless you, and thanks for programming with Palermo. Programming with Palermo has made a special arrangement with Marketplace Chaplains. Besides programming challenges, we all face issues in life where we need some help. If you'd like, you can call a chaplain confidentially. To speak with a gentleman, dial 512-923-8178. Or to speak with a lady, dial 512-619-6950. The show won't know you called, and everything is kept in strict secrecy. This is a free service, available if you or a friend need it.